Hello everyone, nubkeks here, welcome back to Nub Raids, and in today's video, it's a positive one. This is a positive one, looking at some positive changes that could come to the game. This might be the last video. I might squeeze one or two more in before leaving for Japan. It's less than 24 hours we'll be mid-air, flying, in a plane, I should clarify, not just having some got magical powers. But what I want to talk about in today's video is some buffs they could put in to make Hydra a bit easier, to add a bit more variety to the game mode, right? Like, as I'm recording this, like, we've just gone through the whole, like, potential Wixwell nerf, right? Potential nerf to shield caps and to infinity teams and all of that. And there's been this huge debate raging. And Plarium has clarified at time of recording that they are currently working on a complex solution to rebalance Hydra itself, Hydra Clash in particular. I might try push this video out early in case they do like actually publish something while I'm away. But if they're gonna be rebalancing Hydra itself, it does open things up because a lot has changed. An awful lot has changed since Hydra first came out. So let's look at some broad types of champions. There's actually quite a commonality between the ones I'd like to see buffed and why. So the first thing, I'd actually like to see poisons coming in. So I just did a video with Hades, right? And we were talking about types of champions that are actually, or specific champions that are really good, but don't have a great place in the game. And I think poison sort of falls into that. Falls into that niche pretty hard, actually, where, gosh, back in the day, poisons used to dominate. They dominated in Demon Lord. They dominated a ton of the basic dungeons, even level 25 dungeons. But then hard mode dungeons came out, and like Ice Golem, which was big on poison, didn't really matter anymore. Hard Dragon is so easy, and you can use reflecting debuffs. You don't even need the poison anymore. Hydra poisons are just kind of useless from the start. And yeah, it just feels like poisons have really fallen by the wayside. I talked about Supreme Kale being like a great poisoner. Doesn't really have a place where he shines in the game. They even put in like a cool blessing, lethal dose, which I think is quite fun. And I have seen some cool, I've even done a video on it, some cool high blessing lethal dose Supreme Kale gameplay in Arena. And then they came out with Siege, the new mode. And guess what? Lethal dose doesn't work. It doesn't work in Siege, which is probably the place where it would have been used the most, because of course lethal dose is well, it's only in Arena, and Siege technically isn't Arena, so this blessing doesn't even work there, which totally sucks. But anyway, that's sort of beside the point. I kind of like some changes to that as well. But let's just talk about poison in general for Hydra. That could be quite cool. You know, again, when Hydra first came out, we were doing so much less damage, and I think they wanted to make sure that it wouldn't be another game mode at the time. A time in the game, this was like over 2 years ago. Or was it maybe even 3 years ago now, when this came out, where poison was very, very dominant. They didn't want another game mode dominated by poison, so it was different. Well, now we're at a point in the game, years later, where poison doesn't have too much place in the game. Bringing it into Hydra more could be pretty fun, right? A lot of the heads are simply immune to poison. Yeah, so one thing I think they could change, two changes they could do. Number one would be the simple change of make the other heads be poisonable. And maybe that even just is enough. If it is still a concern that maybe poison would be too strong, I don't really see that, to be honest. But if it was, you could make them take a bit reduced damage. Another change you could put in, which could be kind of cool, would be to make the Head of Suffering maybe take bonus damage from poison, right? I think it's actually quite a fun thing with Head of Blight. And we'll talk about how I think they should probably tone that up even. That the Head of Blight, right, he takes, which one is it? I always get confused. This one. I think. I always get confused. He takes bonus damage from HP burn. That's quite a cool little feature. Maybe we could have Head of Suffering or the Head of Decay. Maybe those could take extra damage from poison. They're the two heads right now, or two of the heads that can be poisoned. I think maybe Torment can be poisoned as well. I think it's these three can be poisoned, and the other three can't. But it'd be kind of cool if they made one or two. Maybe Decay takes or Suffering takes 3 times damage from poison. Decay takes 2 times damage. Even if the other heads are, maybe you could even have it, they're still immune, but these specific heads, there's 3 of them that take bonus damage from poison. So those single target poisoners can actually do something. Will this like replace every composition? No, I absolutely don't think so. I still don't know if it would be that strong, but it might be kind of interesting and bring poisoners back in a pretty cool way. On a similar note, again, enemy max HP, and this is also why I think poisons probably won't be that strong. Enemy max HP champions. These have also, they're not, again, they're not totally useless, but they've also fallen off a lot. Like if I take a quick gander at my clan, this is a very low scoring week, so I think we're trying to score pretty low here in Hydra Clash. Like these other guys are, I think, too far ahead. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if we go to like brutal or something like that. What was I saying? I can't remember what I said. Oh, enemy max HP. There's just not much enemy max HP showing up anymore. There's a little bit. Marius definitely showing up. Like here's a Marius. He's actually done really well. He's actually done really well here. He is managing to compete. I use Atharion. He's doing decently. You know, he's not bad, not bad. But they're not really shining. Not like they used to. When Hydra first came out, it was all about the enemy max HP. Maybe to too great of a point. I actually think we hit a fairly good balance point, but regular damage dealers are just pulling ahead. Why is that? Well, number one, decreased defense and especially weaken debuffs have become more common. You can get those into your team. Number two, new gear sets. So in a big way, 9-piece protection, right? More damage for each buff placed pushes your damage higher. That's a huge deal. 9-piece feral is going to be, people build that eventually, going to push your damage higher. Let's say I use ninja, yeah? 6-piece merciless. Whereas back in the day, you had savage with 25% or lethal with 25% ignore defense. And you could put it with cruel for an extra 5. Now you've got merciless with 35% ignore defense, so even more ignore defense. On top of that, I'm very lazy in my area bonus. I need to do more live arena, but now you've got another 20% ignore defense from area bonuses from Hydra. And what all this stuff put together means, on top of blessings and everything like that as well, it means that while as enemy max HP champions, you give them all of these stats pretty early on, and giving them all those extra stats and perks and buffs and everything, they're going to hit a damage cap, right? Because enemy max HP is capped to 10% of the Hydra's health. They're going to hit that cap and they cannot go higher. And this is especially true when heads are decapitated, right? Where they take extra damage, you'll often find, oh, my enemy max HP guy, he's hitting a decapitated head as hard as he hits others. I think a great example is a Newt, right? If you hit a decapitated head with Newt, you will do less damage than if you hit a living head of suffering, because he's capping enemy max HP either way, and head of suffering has the most max HP, so it just does more if you hit the living head. That's another place where they fall behind. Whereas your other damage, I think Thor, perfect example, just an absolute beast. Thor, all the stat is just ramping up, right? The more stats you give him, the more buffs he gets, the more power creep in terms of stats and blessings and everything in the game. There's no cap on his. It just keeps going up and up and up, right? Maybe it's time for a buff to enemy max HP, right? What could we do? Oh, there's a few things we could do. We could actually, we're going to touch on this, and this was going to tie into some of my other again, this very similar thing. Burns. We'll come back to that. Possibly just, you know, if they're going to rebalance Hydra in a significant way, we could maybe up the Hydra HP, right? That's something we could maybe do. And maybe focus more into Hydra HP than Hydra defense, because Hydra defense is in a weird spot. If you consider, like, let's actually do the maths real fast. If we consider 35% ignore defense from Merciless, 20% from area bonuses, we're already up. We're already up to 55%. If we put in a Helm Smasher, Helm Smasher, what was it, 55? We're up to 80%. That's crazy. If we put in 5% Cruel as well, now we're up to we're up to 85%. And gosh, if you put in Crushing Rend, a nightmare. Crushing Rend is another 31%. You're actually way beyond ignored. You're actually getting excess ignore defense to the point where people will run like maybe the 6-piece Merciless, but they'll ditch the Cruel and they'll put in Zeal instead, because it's going to give you more damage. Helm Smasher still, like, if we ignore Cruel, okay, even so, Merciless, area bonus, and Crushing Rend, these are always on buffs. We've got 35, 55. Now we're up to 86. You've got 86% ignore defense always on, right? It almost becomes a point of, why does the Hydra heads have defense stats anyway? And it actually becomes really punishing. If you increase the Hydra defense, it actually becomes super punishing to low spend and free to play players that are missing this Crushing Rend. Whereas, you know, your Krakens that obviously have an easier time in live arena and can therefore get this area bonus quicker. And we'll have an easier time getting Merciless. And we'll definitely massively have an easier time getting 6-star Crushing Rend. Like, they're like, oh, you increase the Hydra defense? Well, I'm ignoring basically all of it anyway. I don't care. So I do think that could be something to maybe lower the Hydra defenses a bit, but scale up their HP to maybe get a bit more equalization between these different damage dealers. And that would, by the way, by upping the Hydra HP, it ups the damage of all these moves which scale off of max HP. That could be a nice way to make enemy max HP damage dealers stronger. You could also let the enemy max HP just do double damage, or what? I think it's double damage against decapitated heads, or triple damage. I can't remember. Maybe it's triple. I don't know. But letting them scale up a bit more against decapitated heads could be kind of nice, so that they actually do benefit from decapitation. Whereas other, same way that other champions can as well. That could be kind of cool. Burns in here. Now, burns are still, like, compared to poisons, burns are still good for Hydra. I think, again, one of the issues is just that power creep, right? The burn is based off the Hydra's max HP. So burns are just as good now as they were 3 years ago, like when Hydra first came out. They haven't got any stronger. They're just the same. Whereas just our accounts in general, like I said, the gear, the power creep, that has pushed all of our other damage up like crazy. Like, it's unbelievable in the last year, almost month by month, looking at my clan, for instance, like how high the damage is going. It's just crazy. It's crazy. Like, our Hydra keys from a year ago are just a joke compared to our keys now. Burns haven't improved with the time. It might be nice to see burns improve a little bit more. So upping the Hydra HP, that would certainly help. And don't get me wrong, by the way, like, obviously, if you don't have this crazy gear and power, like, if you're an earlier game account, I'm sure burns are still super relevant, and they are the entryway in, because it doesn't matter how bad your gear is or how good your gear is. Burns do the same thing. And they are still somewhat relevant. Like, here we've got some burns with the Gizmak, right? They're not, Sulfurion, he's still good. So burns don't need a huge buff like poison would, but a little improvement would be nice. One thing they could do, maybe actually increase the blight damage increase. So I say, okay, you know what? Head of Blight, she's really taking a lot of damage from burn now. Right, burn's already good against Head of Blight. Let's double down. Right, let's double down. And let's make some of these things like a bit, okay, let's make poisons really good against the Head of Suffering. Let's make burns really good against the Head of Blight. So, yeah, you've got your more generalist teams. But, hey, look, if you want to build an interesting, like, burn specialist team that's really about Head of Blight, you can do that, and it's a bit more rewarding. That could be kind of cool. That could be kind of fun. So, yeah, maybe that would be a nice thing to do. On top of increasing the Hydra max HP, and sort of redistributing that balance of health to defense, which obviously would benefit any of these max HP scaling champs. Again, upping some specific Hydra heads to have more bigger, cooler counters would be kind of nice. Final change to talk. I mean, just a simple video with some simple ideas. I've mentioned this way back before in the past, probably a couple of times, but I want to return to it because I think it'd be kind of fun. Would be, on top of maybe boosting some of these heads' weaknesses, boosting their decapitation effects, right? So when you decapitate a head, you get a benefit. Those benefits, though, are so small, half the time you don't really notice them. The big one that you really notice is Head of Suffering, or not Suffering, Head of Mischief. When you decapitate him, he drains some of the enemy's turn meter. And that's pretty cool. And, like, they all do a bit, but, like, Head of Wrath does a tiny bit of damage when you kill him. Head of Blight does a tiny bit of damage to burned heads. It's just very underwhelming. They could totally up the impact of these decapitation effects. I think that just makes it a bit more fun, right? When you decapitate a head, wow, I'm getting a really big benefit. Like, cool. I don't know. We kill Mischief, it fully depletes all of their turn meters. Okay, wow, cool. When we decapitate Head of Blight, like, man, boom, he explodes with a really big chunk of enemy max HP damage to those heads. You're like, oh shit, that was pretty cool, actually. Or Head of Wrath, where he, like, smacks them with a big crit, and maybe he does huge damage to other decapitated heads. That could be cool. You know, you could do fun stuff. You could make the decapitation stuff a lot more engaging, really. I don't think it's very engaging right now, and oftentimes can feel underwhelming. And that would be a nice way to just get very neutrally rebalance Hydra itself. And yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe it would have some weird effects I'm not foreseeing, but I also think one of those weird effects might be making things more fun. So there you go. That's some of my thoughts on it. Again, there's very much a theme to this, which is, yeah, sort of champs that are scaling off of the health, the HP of Hydra have definitely started to fall behind. And certainly in the last few months, they are falling behind. And only, for later game players, they're really dropping out of teams in a big way. They're just not as impactful as they were before. And it's, that sort of cap on their damage feels a bit bad when any power creep is not benefiting them half as much. Yeah, more Hydra difficulties could help with this. One thing I'd be worried about with more Hydra difficulties is, again, crushing Ren. Like, if you keep scaling up the Hydra levels, it's one of those weird things. It's a little side note, but if you keep scaling up the Hydra levels, it makes crushing Rend like way too strong. Like if you up their levels, crushing Rend becomes stronger, right? And you could actually legit get to 100% defense ignore. Yeah, like all the time. It would be crazy. That's bad. But at the same time, I think it is kind of important to up levels because like it's a bit, I think it's a little bit odd if I go into like normal Amius, I'm like, oh, he's level 350, and then I go into hard Amius, I'm like, okay, well, surely he'll be higher level to bit. Nope, he's level 350. Why is this level here? Why is there a level? It doesn't make any sense. What's going on? What is this? you know yeah. So yeah, that's a bit odd. I kind of, it sort of makes sense for bosses to go up in levels, but there's a weird crushing Rand problem, so I don't know what you do with that. But anyway, look, this is what I think. Let me know what you think. Are there any other kind of broad categories of champions that you were like, oh, it would actually be pretty cool if they got a big buff? Like, I did think that the Hex rework, you guys around that remember it, they changed Hex to duplicate some of your damage, and it duplicates extra single target damage. And suddenly, Hex really enabled single target damage, like Turvold, for instance, to really start to excel in Hydra and to get really big benefit. Like the Hex change was brilliant. It was great. And it really changed up the game. I'd like to see similar things with this. Let me know what you would do. And yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.